Hello and welcome to another video. This time we're looking at question 3 on paper 2. Now before we begin, I will draw attention, you will need the pollution paper or to have read the pollution paper that we've been working on through these videos. If you haven't got it, then contact either English teacher or myself and I can give you a copy of it. But it does really matter that you know this paper before we look at the question in particular, because we're talking about the paper itself. Now, before we carry on with the video, same questions that we've had in numerous videos, but we're going to keep testing you. And so what I'd like to do is just pause the video and just see if you can answer these questions. They're key questions that make sure that you understand the paper and know what's going to be on the paper when it comes. Okay, so let's go quickly through then. So how many marks is question 2 worth? It's 8 marks. Number 2, which question is worth the most marks on the reading section? That's question 4. Which 2 questions do you not refer to the writer in your answer? And that is question 1 and question 2. Number 4, which question is the language analysis question? Question 3, which question is the summary question? Number 2, what does the word summary actually mean on this paper? It means inference. It doesn't mean putting things in your own words. Number 7, which questions do you have to write about both text A and B? Well, that will be number 2 and number 4. And which questions do you only write about one text? And that's question 1 and question 3. So just recap of the paper, we're looking at language paper 2, which is the non-fiction paper, 2 extracts from 2 different periods of time, and the paper will be about a particular topic. So the one we're looking at today is pollution. So question 3, and question 3 is always the same question, it's just a text that differs. So if we can get our head around the question, we know what the question is going to be on the exam paper, we just don't know what the text is, so we're kind of preparing ourselves for that. So if we have a look, what is it looking for us to do? So it's looking to us to explain how the writer uses language and explain the effect and some of the choices behind it. Now it's expecting us to talk about the reader and writer. It could be either source A or B. So what the examiner will do, will choose the text that's got quite a lot of techniques and words that are interesting, rather than just being automatically A or B. There are 12 marks available for this question. The national average is slowly increasing, but to get about a grade 4 on this paper for this question, you will need about half marks. And in 2019, it was 6 out of 12 that got you the national average, and that would be a grade 4 ideally. So what we're looking to do is try and get the national average for each question, and that reassures us that we're in that grade 4 above boundary. So we know the grade boundaries will change, but we're looking to beat the national average. The national average will be the grade 4. So that's what you've got to remember. Okay, so let's have a look at the question. This is a standard question for us in English because all the time we're looking at how does the writer use language. So it's not a surprising question. I will say there's a particular style to writing, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the worst answers for this question, what they tend to do is they spot every single technique. Okay, and this question isn't about spotting every single technique in the text. And that's the worst thing to do. So I'm telling you what to avoid first before we even start looking at the question in detail. Number 2, it's not about the reader. You can mention the reader and that's fine, but your answer, if you have a look at the question, it says, how does the writer use language to convey her opinions of smog in London? So really the question is about the writer. And the way that this paper is structured is it's structured for building up, for you to looking at the writer's ideas. It's not about the reader. And the one way to think about it is paper 1, story writing, is about the reader. Paper 2 is mainly about the writer. And yes, you can talk about a reader because you are the reader and you can go, oh, I'm shocked like the writer. But really this question is about the writer and not the reader. So we don't need to have any of that rubbish about it makes the reader want to read on. We're not really bothered really about the reader. It's about the writer. It's not about finding hidden techniques. So it does not matter. I've marked for this exam paper for AQA, and we're not given a set list of techniques and I go straight away, oh, full marks because they've spotted this technique. It isn't. The examiner is looking at how you explain yourself, not the techniques. So what they'll do is they'll give some ideas to the examiner and say, well, they could mention this, this, and this, but if you find something better or even more interesting, you're not penalized or marked down. Okay, so it's not about finding the hidden techniques. And it's not really about spotting things. And that might seem a little bit strange because, in English, a lot of the time we're looking for what's interesting about how it's written. So that's something you've got to be mindful about. There is not 12 separate techniques in the extract that the examiner's looking for you to write about. And when we mark these papers, you see a number of students who have tried to mention every single technique, and often they are the worst answers and they score very, very low on that. And exactly what I've said before, not about spotting things the examiner wants you to spot. Okay, so now we've got all that stuff out, what is it kind of expecting you to do? Well, it's explaining. Explain why the writer used a word or technique. Now, you're starting to see a bit of a picture now, because on question 2, it was about explaining an inference. Here, now, it's about explaining a word or technique. So we're more bothered about your explanation. Yes, you do have to spot a word or a technique, but really, where we give you the marks, it's all about the explaining and not the spotting. The students that do well on this, they say a lot about very, very little. So they may take one word and they will write a whole paragraph about a word. And that is fantastic. That is what we want. We do not want you to have rushing around trying to get so many different techniques into one paragraph. You could spend one paragraph explaining a verb and say why you think that writer used that verb. That's what we're looking for. It's a reading question, so it is about the subtext. What's going on under the surface? Okay, she might say that, oh, it's disgusting, but actually, what is she feeling underneath, the writer? So you've got to dig deep, and that's why I've made that emphasis on reading the text really, really well. You've got to know what's really going on here for us to actually show in our writing. So you can't, on this question, just suddenly go, oh, I found a simile, I'm going to write about simile. And that's where I've said that the problem that happens with a lot of students is that they rush to the techniques and they don't do the thinking. We need you to do that thinking. So that's why those 15 minutes at the start of the exam and reading through the extract is so important, because really get the subtext, get the ideas what's going on, and then you can look at the techniques. Because half the problem is when you're trying to explain a technique, it's quite hard if you've not got a grasp of the subtext of what's really going on and you're fumbling along to try and get an idea. Okay, so we do have a set structure for this question. Obviously, I'm going to say that we've done this before and you should be familiar with this, but it doesn't matter. I'll go through it again so we're clear. So we say that in this question, your response should follow the Squeals formula. Okay, now I'm going to be very, very clear. The Squeals formula, you do not have to follow it religiously. You can write it in whatever order you can. It's up to you. We're just saying that these are the skills that we want to see in this question. So the first thing is the spotted. So the first thing you've got to do is name what the writer uses. Remember, it's not many marks for this, so don't obsess about this one. Then you've got to quote it. So use a quotation. So the writer used the verb wander. There you go. Sort it out. And really, that's the first part of your first sentence. And then that's done. Affect it. So you can talk about the mood, the tone, and the atmosphere. And one thing to think about when reading the text is it a positive or negative thing? Because that is clearly showing what the writer's ideas are. They're not happy. So the tone and the atmosphere and the mood of the writing is not going to be a happy one. Now, I've put those in the colour red. And the reason why I've put those in the colour red is because those are the basic skills. Those are the basics. And if you want less than half marks, then those are the sort of things that you should be aiming for. Okay? Spot it, quote it, affect it. They are the basics. You need to have those. However, the next three are the things that get you the higher marks. Okay, so you've got to have those three things: spot, quote, effect, and then build it up. And so this is where you get your most marks. And this is why I've put it in green. It's the explain it. Why did the writer use this word? What is the reason for them using it? That is where you're going to get most of your marks from this. The link it. Okay, so the link it, some students find quite hard because they're thinking, I don't know what to link it in. Well, that just means that you're kind of grounding it into what's going on. So, for example, you could say, well, the writers use this word because this is somebody who is knowledgeable about science. So they're using scientific words. So what you're doing there is you're linking your explanation to what you know about the person. You could also link it to somewhere else in the text, so you can make a connection to that. That linking is really, really important skill because that's what good readers do. They make connections. They go, oh, this is a Victorian text, and I know about the Victorians because I know about the Industrial Revolution. So they make those connections. That's what good readers do. They explain in detail and they link. The symbolize it. Now, this is where we're going a little bit further. Okay, so this is where we think of the bigger picture. So what does this little technique, what does it symbolize about the bigger world, about society? So is it representation of how men and women are treated differently? And so we've got gender. Is it a symbol of power? Is it a symbol about an idea in society? Is it a symbol of religion? So be careful with the symbolism one, because some people just chuck in symbols left, right, and centre. So you've really got to think about that one. And again, it's based on knowing the text really well. If you've read it properly in that 15 minutes, then you will be able to probably pick out some of these big ideas that's in the text. So squeals, there you go, in a nutshell. You want to be doing all of those in any order. There's no set order for doing them. However, what we're saying is the red stuff are your basics. You've got to get those, and it's the green stuff that's going to take you further. All right, so the explain, link, and symbolize it. And kind of think about how they are, as they're on the page there, think about that's the kind of importance that you've got to do. So explain it is the really, really important thing, and then link and symbolize is the next level up. Okay, so let's have a go at a question then. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to pause the video and just have a look at this extract from the pollution paper that we've got. And I want you to see what you can say about techniques or words. And notice I'm saying words and not just techniques all the time, because you can pick out words. And if you're ever stuck, pick out 3 words and find and see what you can say about those. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to find 3 things in the text. So what 3 things could you say that's interesting about the way that language is used here? Okay, so just pause the video and spot 3 things for me. Okay, give you a little bit of a heads up about this. What happens with text like this is students try to find everything. And the problem is that when you've got a text in front of you like that, there are lots of techniques there. There are hundreds. And there are lots of words there, 100 words. So really, you could pick any of those. And I think what happens to a lot of students is they go a little bit technique crazy. And they go, oh, I spot this, and I can spot this, and I can spot this. And the problem is that when you're writing, you don't want to write about everything. You really only want to pick out 3. So my advice is stick to 3 things. If you spot anything else, that's great. But you can see where the problem comes in when you read the text at the beginning of the exam and you spot every single technique. You overclutter your brain with so many things. And sometimes we get to the point where there's too much to write about. So my advice is pick 3. Pick 3 things that you think is quite interesting. I've picked out 3 here. It's not come out quite well, but you can see it if you've got your copy of the text, and I'm going to go through in a bit more detail. So things I picked out as 3 little bits that I liked about this one. One, where it enters in every pore. The other bit, London has a terrifying face. And between them wander corpses awaiting the hour of burial. Now I've just picked out 3. Okay, now it's not a right or wrong, so don't feel that you've got it wrong if you didn't pick those out. I just picked those out, and this is the great thing about English, is there's hundreds of ways you can approach this question. Hundreds of different ideas there. So your ideas may be different to mine. That doesn't mean your ideas are wrong. It just means I've chosen different ones to yours. And that's the beauty of this. And that's why, as English teachers, it's great for marking, because we're not reading the same one all the time. So I'm going to take these 3 in particular, and I'm going to kind of show you how can we explain these things. So I've spotted 3 language points here. So what can I say about them? Okay, so I'm going to start off with enters in every pore. And the thing that happens with a lot of things is that students tend to jump. They jump things and they want to go for the symbolism and they want to go for the really, really clever stuff. And really, just stop and think, why did the writer use that particular phrase? Now, at the moment, I'm not talking about techniques. I'll come back to techniques. I've just chosen this little line here because I think it's really, really interesting for me. All right, it's my opinion. You may find something else interesting, but I find this bit interesting, okay, for us to talk about from a language point of view. So the thing I think is interesting is it gives a sense that the people in London cannot escape because it's everywhere. So it says here it's entering every pore. So it's not just pores, you know, on skin. So it's entering everywhere. So their feet and their legs and their arms. So it's almost like the people cannot escape it because it's everywhere. It's not just a bit of their face because it's exposed. It's everywhere. So it's this idea that the smog and the pollution is covering completely. I also think that it gives that sense that the smog is attacking people. I also think it's like a disease, and we know that chemicals can get into our skin through the pores, can't they? So I kind of think that the fact that it's entering the skin, it makes it sound like the smog is a poison and that they can't get out, or it's a disease, and it's using that verb enters, that kind of thing, that it's kind of forcing itself into your skin. And it gives a really, really negative feeling behind this little phrase here. I almost think it's smothering them, and smothering is to cover everything about them. So all that stuff is what I could say about why I think the writers use that phrase, to give the idea that the pollution is attacking them, that it's a disease, and it's smothering them. All these ideas from one little quote there. And you can see how easy it is when you put it down simply like this. So take your quote, think about what you can say. What does it make you think of? What does it make us understand? What is it teaching us? Then think about the writer's opinion. So I've got here, these are the writer's opinions. I've just bullet pointed them. So she thinks London's different to French cities, that the pollution has spoilt London, that she's disgusted with the pollution, that she's shocked that people are accepted it. Okay, so let's think about that then. So the writer's idea. So yes, she's showing us that it's like a disease and it's smothering and attacking. It could link into the fact that she's shocked that people accept it because, you know, it's everywhere. So maybe that links into her opinion there that, you know, she's shocked, but it's everywhere. And so, you know, she can't believe that people aren't addressing this. If it's everywhere and they can't escape it, she's surprised why they are accepting it and not saying, no, let's stop this pollution. So it links into that idea. So she's kind of saying that this is like a poison. And if that's the case, then maybe she thinks that it slowly affected them. And like a poison, it doesn't just suddenly, some poisons don't suddenly kill you, but it could be a slow thing. So you can see how you can build up this paragraph. And then we can start referring to techniques. And we can say, well, we've got the verb enters. That's how the pollution is getting to people. It's entering them, okay, and which suggests obviously movement. And then we've got the noun phrase every pore. So this idea of, that it's getting everywhere. So you can see how easily it is to pull those in together. So we're going to do it again for another one. Okay, let's have a look at another one of the things I've picked out. So this would be our second paragraph. So that first bit would be our first paragraph. This would be our second paragraph. So I've gone with London has a terrifying face. I think it's interesting, you really do need to think about some of the phrases, because London has a terrifying face. It doesn't tell us what the face looks like. It just says that terrifying, really scary face. So it could be that the face is a monster, okay, and that's what's terrifying it. Or it could be that actually the person is very, very, the face of London is very, very scared or something. So it's open, it's quite vague. So it's up to you as a reader to kind of work out what you think it is. So the thing about this is that a face represents the body, doesn't it? So the idea is that it's showing us that the face represents, it's just part of the body. But if the face is terrifying, then maybe the rest of the body is. So it's showing us that this is affecting all parts of London. So the face is just a bit, but the rest of it must match. The face is often the first thing that you see. So she's showing us that actually people are scared straight away when they see London. And it's the first thing that everybody notices. Well, certainly from her. And she's kind of maybe just shocked that this is what she sees straight away. Perhaps the face reflects what's inside. We know if you're happy that your face reflects that you're happy inside and outside. So if this is London monster inside and it's reflected on the face outside, or is this it's scared inside and we're seeing it on the outside of the face? Or it could be, this idea of looking for help. This sort of scared face is looking for help. Now, again, linking it to the writer's opinion. So let's think about that. So it could be the fact that, she has noticed how London is so different to French cities. And so how she's shocked that straight away that this is what she sees. And we've all been to different places and you maybe liked it or not liked it. But you sometimes it takes a bit of time to know a place, doesn't it? But she's seeing this straight away. And this is the first thing that she sees, the face. Now, obviously, we've got personification. And also we've got the idea of metaphor, the face of London. And this idea that the face of London is a monster or something that's scary. Okay, last one then. So, between them wander corpses, awaiting the hour of burial. So, when I read that line, I tend to think of zombies, okay? And this idea of walking slowly and without thought. This idea that they're blind to what is really happening. And that idea of waiting to the hour of burial. So, it could be waiting for their death, the hour of burial. Or it could be waiting for dead bodies, if they're zombies, that kind of thing. They're going to die, so they're already walking corpses. So it's that suggestion that they're already dead or they're dying, and this is how much the smog has affected them. Or it could be just that they're fed up with their lives and what's going on. Now, the writer's opinion, how can we link this in? Well, I think this is the idea that she's shocked that people accept it. And what we're seeing is that shock that people have accepted this and that they're just wandering on and they're walking, so they're ready to die and they're working towards their death. And so that shows that shock that she's come over here and seen what's happened. So again, linking it to the writer's opinion. And we've got the verb wonder. I think wonder is a great verb. And remember, quite easy to see a verb straight away. So wonder, and we've got the metaphor of corpses awaiting their hour of burial. Okay, so we've got two techniques there. So very, very simply, if we turn this into a paragraph, we could say that the writer uses the verb wonder to show us that these people are walking slowly and without thought. which links into her shock that people accepted this terrible conditions of the smog. And you can see how easy it is to build it up. But really, you need to think about your little quotes that you're using and your techniques. The more thought you can have, the better, because that will help you with your explanation. Okay, I'm going to take you through a paragraph, and I'm going to give you a bit of a word of warning that this paragraph is probably a bit clunky. And the reason why I've gone for this very, very kind of basic sort of paragraph writing is to get into your head the idea that the reading questions, you are not assessed on your writing skills. You're assessed on your understanding. And yes, you might have to explain and write in a particular way, but you are not showing off in spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Those things matter, they always matter, but really, this is where you're trying to show your level of understanding. And in a way, this is where you're trying to show, look how clever I am. I've noticed this, and this is what I'm going to do. And as a marker, I have seen some absolutely brilliant pieces of work that have been written in such a kind of very simplistic way, but it's the ideas that the people are explaining that is really getting the marks. So bear that in mind, because a lot of students who are looking to get to the top grades, what they tend to do is they overthink their writing, and your writing isn't really important. Where your writing matters on this paper is question 5, the writing tasks, because that's worth half of the exam paper. So that's where your writing skills should focus. Here it's about reading and showing that you've understood the text really well. So let's have a look at the thing then. So the writer uses the metaphor of corpses walking slowly to create a foreboding atmosphere. So what we've got here is we've got, very, very simply, we've got a technique, we've got our spot it, we've got our quote, and remember, quotes can be one word. It's fine. You don't need big, long quotes. And sometimes short quotes are much better and easier to fit into your writing. And then here we've got atmosphere, we've got the effect, haven't we? So very, very simple. And you can see all within that first sentence, we've got that thing there. So we've got the spot it, quote it, affect it. So you can say, really get it out of the way, do that. And I would always say that your first sentence in your paragraphs should follow the writer uses. Okay, so that's what you've got to be looking for. So pretty simple, straightforward. Next bit. The writer shows us that people are like zombies, and they are mindless because zombies are fixated on one thing, eating brains. The people here are fixated on one thing, work. Now, look at this. This is them explaining why they think the writer has used that. Corpses. And so they've explained it. So they've made it, so the writer's clearly making a link between zombies, and then they explain what zombies do, and then they've made a link back to the actual text itself. So they're saying, right, corpses makes us think that they're like zombies. What do zombies do? They fixate on one thing. And here we have, they're fixated on one thing, and they've got work there. So here we've got explanation and keywords to look at, because. Okay, so because, really need to have a couple of becauses in your explanation, because that's going to help you explain it. Because, so, as are your key words for developing your explanations. So the next thing, this suggests us that the writer thinks people are blind to what is happening and they have no freedom or freedom to think. Now, look at that. This is now me explaining what the writer's opinion is. So I've explained the writer's choice of words. So this is what this means. And this is talking about the writer's opinion. So you can see my explanation, I'm explaining, and I'm explaining here. Now, the other thing to think about is there is nothing wrong with you having a whole sentence explaining what a word means. If that helps you to explain what the writer's doing here, then do it. You know, if you have to say what the word wonder means, then write a sentence, explain it. that shows the examiner that you're explaining what the writer means and what they're trying to do. And sometimes we need to do that. So there's nothing wrong in your writing to just say the word this means this. Okay, so let's carry on. Plus, the writer repeatedly makes reference to death and funerals, which indicated the writer's view that London is killing its people. Now, remember what we said about linking? Here, we've got our links. So they've got talking about reference to death and funerals. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit clever, I could have put some more quotes here. I could have put another quote, couldn't I? And another quote there. And so that's supporting that idea there. That's what this one can do to get better. But also what I've got here is I've got, again, a reference to the writer's opinions. So London is killing its people. So I've got the writer's opinions there. So you can see that I've got an explanation, the writer's opinions. I've made a link across the text. Overall, the writer is showing us how London is a symbol of the impact of the industrial age has had on its people. The use of coal has reduced the country to slaves and zombies to industry. She thinks industry is destroying its people. Now, let's have a look at that again. So we've got the opinions, again, showing us how London is a symbol. We've got that symbolism, haven't we? Again, so we've got symbolism, and I'm linking to the bigger issue, the industrial age, and I'm making that big picture there. Now that is roughly a paragraph, and we want 3 of those. Now notice there's not hundreds of techniques, there's not loads of things in there, and in fact there's only a few sentences. Let's count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very, very simplistic in terms of writing, but it's got quite a few things there that are quite helpful for you to know and in your writing. So look what I'm kind of doing at the end there with this bit here. Overall, so I've kind of got a conclusion in which I kind of sum up what the writer's opinion is. But I'm also making links, and I've got plus, so I'm adding stuff in there as well. So really, you can see how you've got your spot, quote, effect, link, and symbolize in that one little paragraph there. Do that 2 more times and you've got a good answer. But remember, to get to this point, you do really need to make sure that you've read the text really, really well, because you need to know that stuff. And then when it comes to looking at one particular word, then you can explain it and you've got that background knowledge. Now, I think it's handy to have a look at the mark scheme. To always look at the mark scheme and look at seeing where things are. Now, if we have a look here, so on one of the previous slides that I've shown you, it said that about 6 out of 12 was the national average. I think it was 2019 was the national average. So you can see that about here is the grade 4. So that's the grade 4 in 2019. So you can see anything below that wouldn't have got a grade 4, and anything above it would have got a grade 4. And this is where I'm going to be able to explain the exam mark scheme for you, so that you know when you're writing, how does it all fit in together. So there are 3 bullet points. The top bullet point is the most important thing that the examiner's looking for. Okay, they will look at the other bullet points, but the first one is the most important one. So if you have a look as we go through it, so to get 0 marks, there's nothing interesting in there. Okay, to get level 1, not grade 1, but just the first band, okay, simple limited comment. Well, that's quite self-explanatory, isn't it, really? You know, a very simple comment. So you've got to say a simple comment about the effect, and you just pick out simple quotes and use simple subject terminology. So that might be just saying there's a word. You know, the writer uses the word this. Okay, that's what they're kind of looking for. So this word and that. Now, this might mean in your writing that you might go, the writer uses the word this, to show us how bad the place is. It's kind of simple idea here. If we go to level 2, some understanding. Now, this little thing here, it says effective language. What that actually means is it means meaning. It means that you understand why the writer has chosen that word. It doesn't mean that you're talking about the mood and the atmosphere. It means the reason why the writer's chosen it. So, for example, the writer has used the verb wander to give a sense of how slow everybody moves. That would be enough to get you into that there. Some quotes and some terminology. So look in your bullet points, terminology is pretty low on the bullet points. So what is it then that gets you above a grade 4? Well, it's this: clear and relevant explanation. So usually what happens with level 2 students is they pick out really good points, but they don't develop it. Or they have a really good explanation, but the point isn't good. So what they got is just glimpses of really good stuff, but it's not developed. And here is what you need to do. To get 7 or 9 to 9 marks, you've got to really find a good point and develop it. And it's all about that development. And look here, explain clearly. So it's about your explanation, the effects of the writer's choices. And be careful that word effects. It doesn't mean necessarily the reader. It's talking about why the writer has chosen. So meaning comes under that word effects. So what does the writer really mean when they made this choice? That's what we're doing. Now, to look at the top band, what is it that the top band are doing? Well, look at that word, detailed. All right, they go into more detail than all the others. And this is your grade 7s, your grade 8s, and your grade 9s. Okay, this is what they would be doing. So they would be going into more depth. They would be going in even more on a particular word. That's not about the number of points. So don't get this confused that to get to the top band, you've got to have lots of points. No, it's detailed. And they use this word perceptive. Perceptive shows that you have got a really good understanding of the text to the point that you pick out subtle things that nobody else would have spotted. Okay, so you really know what the text is about. And if you can see, the analysis means that you've got in-depth discussion of the choice and the reasons behind the choice. Selects a range of text quotes to use and uses sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology. So doesn't mean that it's going to be a fantastic technique. It just might mean that you kind of use more technique terminology than somebody in level 1 and level 2. All right, so don't think it's something fantastic technique. There isn't a sophisticated list of techniques there. It will probably be the way in which you write about the terminology that gets you those marks there. So in a nutshell, simple, little glimpses, okay, clear explanation, detailed explanation, but they're picking up on the subtle points and the really hidden things about the text that you can't spot on a quick read of the text. So that's why your 15 minutes is really important when reading the text. Okay, quick little opportunity for you to have a go yourself, just to practice, go through that process in your brain. I've taken another paragraph from the extract. Just pause the video, think about what 3 things you would pick out of here if you could, based on this extract here. So pause the video now. When the pause video symbol disappears, that's when I'll explain what I would have come up with. Okay, for me, I would have picked up on these things. Remember, there's no right or wrong, so you might have different ones. So I've got the idea of heavy, and I think that gives the sense that it's a weight on people, so people are feeling, and later on in the extract it talks about people being sluggish and can't move. So I think, this is that idea metaphorically of people being weighted down, that this is something oppressive, miserable, and it's weighing them down, and the kind of the guilt and the experience of the people. The imagery, fuel of hell, that idea of, heaven, hell, religious. We know of the age, Victorian age was very religious. So this idea that England is a place of hell, and it's where people are tortured for the things that they've done bad in their lives. So this is, people are being tortured. So it gives us that sense that people are being tortured, and it's the worst of humanity, the worst of what's going on. Countless. Countless means that you can't count them. So that there's an infinity. So this is this idea there's an infinite number of furnaces. So this idea that the problem, the factories, there's so many of them that you can't count them. And so it's taken over. The idea that factories are taken over. Now there's lots of other words in there. It's fine if you picked them. It's not a problem. I've just picked 3. Remember, when you get your extract, look for 3 things. Okay, last few things then. So tips then. My little bits of tips on this question. Okay, if you're stuck, zoom in on a word. If you can't find a technique, do not worry. Zoom in on a word like I did on, wonder or corpses, and then explain that in great detail. Aim to say 3 things about a quotation. We did those on my examples, and it shows you how easy it is to do. That's the thinking. That allows you to think about it. And then think about what the writer's feelings and thoughts are. The writer's showing us this because they feel this, or they think that. Those people looking to get the top grades at 7, 8s and 9s, look at how writers use a combination of techniques to get an idea across. They will tend to use more than one technique to give us the sense of how something is. So, for example, they might use a simile, and they'll use repetition to show us how bad something is. So look for combinations of techniques. That then means when you're explaining your ideas, then you can draw on those 2 different ideas and 2 different techniques. Offer more than one explanation. So, for example, the idea of people being corpses could be the idea of being zombies, or it could be the suggestion that people are dead already and they're just waiting to die. So look for more than one explanation when you're explaining. Another thing to look for is allusions or references to well-known stories, myths, ideas, religion, allusions. So look for hidden meanings or symbols that can be drawn out of the text. So think about those things, because often there will be a reference to a myth or something religious in the text that we can draw attention. And that's that high level analysis, because it won't be there, obviously. And we've got it here with Cyclops. We've also got it with hell, and they're quite obvious in this extract. However, then it might not be. So, for example, if it was dealing with water, you might be able to make a link towards Poseidon and things like that. So certainly have a think about how you can link those into your ideas that you've got. Now, I'm going to put on here all different techniques. I want you to try and have a go at seeing if you can remember all the different techniques. Now, we've done this over a couple of years, and there was a reason behind having all these different techniques, is because at the end of the day, we want you to be able to quickly spot maybe some of these in the extract and to help you with these. Okay, so I will come back to these at another point, but pause the video and just have a go, see if you can name the different techniques that we've got here. They're all kind of techniques that we would expect to see in a text like this. So, for example, we've got metaphors in this one, we've got repetition, we've got religious imagery, we've got quite a lot of things here in this extract that are these techniques that we've been looking in years 7, 8 and 9. Okay, so see if you can have a go at remembering all of those. Okay, so question 1, 2 and 3 are done now. What I suggest you to do is, if you haven't done question 2 or question 1, find them on our YouTube videos. They're there, go through it, make sure you know this. We will be doing a mock exam when school restarts, so you can kind of make sure you're prepared for it by going through each of these questions, and knowing what to do. Last quick few things then. So we're going to go through the questions, quick questions, checking, making sure that you've taken on board a lot of what we've said. So just pause the video, and then when the pause symbol disappears, I'll go through the answers. Okay, so let's go through the answers then. So number 1, how many marks is question 3 worth? It's 12 marks. What structure should you follow in writing the answer? Well, you're looking to use the squeals, so spot it, quote it, affect it, explain it, link it, and symbolize it. Now remember that you don't have to do it in that particular order. You can do it in any order. You just need to show those skills. What should you not write about in your answers? Well, you shouldn't really write about that much about the reader, to be honest. And what you should avoid doing is listing lots of techniques. Okay. Number 4, what must you make sure you do in your answer? Well, that is explain. You must explain and link to the writer's thoughts and feelings. That's what you've got to do. And also, if there's an opportunity, explain what a word means. Number 5, how many paragraphs should you write for this question? You should aim to write 3 paragraphs. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. All our videos will be uploaded there, and we'll keep them there for mock exams and also for the actual exams itself. We'll also put feedback on there as well. So stay tuned for more videos that are being uploaded as we go along, but please do subscribe. If you have any questions, any issues, or anything you want me to look at in videos to help you out, then message me on Show My Homework, and I'll have a look at making a video and helping you out that way. Thank you.